Welcome to episode 35 of The Geekly. My name is Jules.
I'm Lex. Today we're gonna talk about Game of Thrones, Twilight Zone,
Doom Patrol, Arrow, Flash, and Legends of Tomorrow. It's quite a packed show today.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I mean, let's start by talking about this week. Jorah is going to be Bruce Wayne. How do you feel about that?
He's not what I would expect from a Bruce Wayne. Like, I would never look at him and be like, oh yeah, he'd be an awesome Bruce Wayne. But, I mean, he's a good actor, so I think he'll bring something interesting to the role. It might be, like, kind of a new take on Bruce Wayne, which would be interesting, because we usually only get, like, a very sort of specific kind of Bruce.
Yeah, I mean, we should mention this is in Titans. So, yeah, I'm going to think he's going to be kind of older.
Dick Grayson is kind of... He's sort of coming into his own, so...
Becoming Nightwing, yeah. So we're going to have an older Bruce. And I've really liked... I think his name's Ian Glenn. I've really liked him as Jorah in Game of Thrones. And sometimes when you watch a show and you get really invested in a character and the person that plays them, when the show ends, they kind of go off and do something. It might not be a show that you're that interested in, so you kind of like lose track of their career. But it's quite cool that he's going straight from Game of Thrones into Titans. I always worry as well that the accent won't be good because he's obviously British.
Yeah. He's
going to be playing an American. I've just got this thing, as soon as I hear like one little blip in the accent, I'm like, oh no, why didn't you just cast an American? So yeah, I'm interested to see what he brings to it. I'm excited by the fact there's going to be like a Bruce Wayne on TV. I think let's not take any focus off Dick Grayson becoming Nightwing, because that's going to be a great story. He finally puts on that
so
suit.
Excited about that. Like I want Nightwing so bad.
Yeah, so maybe like 1 or 2 episodes, maybe 3 dotted about the season, but let's keep the focus on this kind of new breed of characters that don't always get the exposure they deserve.
I think too he's gonna do sort of like a similar thing that like Ben Affleck brought to the role of kind of embodying that sort of ground down
spent
world.
Force.
Yeah, like
that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
and that coupled with the rise of the Titans and kind of the next generation coming in, like there's a lot of possibility there.
Let's move on to a great story this week, American Horror Story season 9, and it looks like, obviously trailers can be a bit misleading. This is barely a teaser trailer. I think it was less than 30 seconds. It looks like it's going to be like a slasher / serial killer season, which I think when we were talking about season 8, we just said, can we just bring this back to basics? The show disappeared up its own arsehole and it's just become kind of a bit style over substance. Let's have just a serial killer where we don't know who the serial killer is to the penultimate episode, not the kind of episode 5 shuffle that we get in sort of most American Horror Story seasons.
Or even if it's like, kind of follows the thread of kind of the 80s slasher fix, like where you have like Freddy or Jason, where you know who the bad guy is. He's not humanized.
Yeah, a kind of supernatural element, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be really great. And I think about the strongest seasons of American Horror Story, the first couple, 1 and 2, when it was just very simple storylines, very sort of like classic horror tropes, and they didn't try to get too like off the wall or creative with it. They just sort of stuck to, what is great about those particular genres. And so, I mean, I think a kind of 80s slasher series could work really well. Personally, like, the teaser trailer was really...
It was threadbare, wasn't it? It was just, there was nothing. Yeah,
like it was like the least exciting.
We still exist, don't worry.
Basically,
the Fox Marvel, so the Fox Disney merger thing is still happening. We don't know where we're going to be, but don't worry, we're not dead. We're still here.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of did the bare minimum. I didn't watch it and think, oh yeah, I'm really excited for the next season of American Horror Story. It's just kind of like, really?
We'll watch it for sure.
The thing that I'm really excited about is the Cowboy Bebop live action movie with John Cho playing Spike Spiegel.
You've been super excited about this. Yeah, I've never seen Cowboy Bebop, so please, you have the floor.
Cowboy Bebop is kind of like what got me into anime. And I'm not like a huge fan of anime, but Cowboy Bebop has everything you could possibly want in it. I mean, it's like takes place in space, there are bounty hunters, the characters are all incredibly dysfunctional and bizarre, and yeah, it's a great world, very like jazz influenced, which is also kind of cool. It's just like, yeah.
And their fight scenes over jazz, we've talked about that in we've talked about that in Black Lightning.
There are fight scenes with jazz, but it works in this. It's more kind of like, like Tobias's jazz is kind of like easy listening sort of stuff. Cowboy Bebop jazz is more kind of like, well, it's sort of in the name, like the sort of bebop thing. It's kind of a faster paced jazz offshoot. Okay. But yeah, it works really well. Probably most notable this week is Star Wars Episode 9 trailer.
My interest kind of died after I saw Episode 7, if I'm being completely honest. The trailer looks good. I mean, don't get me wrong, LucasArts and Disney know how to put out an amazing trailer. I haven't seen 8. I'm not really tempted to see 8 or 9.
We can't be friends.
Yeah.
That's it. The end of the podcast.
What are your kind of thoughts about Star Wars at the moment? moment, like the kind of the State of the Union, state of Star Wars.
I'm so excited for episode 9. Like, I've watched the trailer like several times at this point, and it just, yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm looking forward to it.
I really liked Rogue One. I think I've said that on this podcast before, but maybe I'll have to have like a 7, 8, 9 in a weekend kind of.
We should do like a rewatch and not release order, but like chronological order, which means like we will have to watch the prequels, which is kind of. But yeah, we should definitely watch before December. We should.
Okay, yeah, maybe we'll do a kind of bonus content episode with our Star Wars thoughts.
Yeah,
I think my issue is kind of the fact that we had a trilogy. Okay, maybe there was a bit more story to be told. The prequels, they weren't told particularly well. That was the issue. And then it's just like, do we need another 3 episodes again with more like Skywalker stuff and again with more Leia stuff? Maybe I know there's going to be another trilogy in the future that's got nothing to do with the Skywalker kind of saga, but maybe it's just we'll have had 9 basically, and it's all one big story. I just think maybe they should have gone somewhere else a bit sooner.
I think we absolutely need these 3 Star Wars.
Fair enough.
And speaking of Star Wars, Disney Plus has launched their new service, and they're gonna have like a Star Wars Western.
Yeah, I'll definitely give that a watch. That sounds amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
is that The Mandalorian?
Yeah, The Mandalorian. Yeah.
Directed by Jon Favreau.
I'm kind of reaching my threshold with streaming services, particularly like streaming services that are only available in the US.
Yeah, I mean, what have we got? Hulu, Disney Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime,
DC's streaming
service, CBS All Access. There are too many.
There are too many. Yeah. I think like we need to kind of they need to start merging together and forming conglomerates, or doing like the cable companies and just like.
Yeah, I mean, I have this idea that I think a company should talk to all of them and say, we're going to offer a deal where they give us $20 a month and they get to pick any 3 that they can sort of have this one big like package deal. But yeah, there are just too many. There are too many great shows at the moment as well. It's a golden era of TV.
It really is, and streaming has given us so many more opportunities. There's the whole kind of like Hollywood thing of like streaming films aren't real theater because you don't see them in the cinema, which is bullshit.
Spielberg said that.
I know. I
that,
lost all respect for him at that point. I was just like, you are an elitist.
I don't know what the group of them are called, but you know, all the big like studios. The fact that Fox, 20th Century Fox doesn't exist anymore. They think apparently Netflix have been in talks to kind of fill that gap, and so they will be actually a proper, respectable studio now. So that's something that's actually could be happening. But yeah, I mean, Spielberg, you know, you thought all the people that be
you
just...
would think that like he would be into it, like, you know, all of these kind of directors and screenwriters and filmmakers being given opportunities outside of kind of the Hollywood blockbusters, which is incredibly difficult to break into, especially, you know, as a writer or a director. You usually have to like spend decades working your way up, and just the accessibility that the streaming services have for audiences who like maybe can't make it to the theater or can't sit through the whole thing, or like the ability to see kind of good new content in your home, I think is an amazing thing.
Yeah, and obviously Netflix was the pioneer, but I've got to be honest, I think there's going to be a time, possibly this year, where I just pull the plug on Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, particularly with Disney Plus coming along, like Netflix is going to lose a lot of its library with these other streaming services. I mean, they already lost all the Marvel shows. As the Disney licenses start expiring, they're not going to be renewed, because obviously Disney's going to want to have those on its own streaming service, and it's just going to kind of be like a desolate wasteland. I mean, I think maybe if Netflix kind of really steps up their game in terms of their original content, they might keep people. But
I think they should do a British House of Cards. And I know what you're going to say, the original was a British House of Cards, but a current day Houses of Parliament House of Cards set in Britain, they allude to the fact that, you know, the Underwoods were in America and blah blah blah. It's all part of the same like connected universe. That would be great, but that's kind of, I think, dead now. I watched BoJack Horseman, Sunny in Philly, but other than that, that's kind of since the Netflix Marvel went, that's kind of my Netflix watching, really. Well, let's dive straight into The Flash, which we just watched. I've got to be honest, I found it incredibly watchable. A few weeks ago we had Star City 2040. This was kind of Central City 2049, and the fact that there was no cicada anywhere, it was nice to be talking about something else. It was a Nora story set in 2049 and how she kind of got her powers, met Thorn, and it was surprisingly watchable, I thought. What did you think?
A Nora origin story is not something I ever wanted or needed.
Absolutely.
It was alright. I think it just kind of it breaks even as far as an episode goes. There wasn't really anything horribly wrong with it. The 2049 storyline went pretty smoothly. Like, there weren't really any sort of hiccups there. I am kind of curious as to, like, why Thawne decided to help Nora. I mean, like, I know he's sort of had this weird sort of viewing himself as Barry's kind of mentor. Maybe, like, that did it, because obviously he knows who Nora is. But, like, I found the reactions of Team Flash to be kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is, do you remember back in the day, like, when the backdoor pilot for The Flash came out, Barry was this bumbling, lovable, kind of silly character. He is now so very dark. Everyone forgave Nora, and he's the one that's holding the grudge. Obviously, you know, Eobard Thawne did terrible things, but this Barry, it's almost like he's so close to becoming Savitar. He's that timeline, Barry Allen. He just, at the end, everyone forgives her, and he basically says, yeah, I don't. And he takes her to 2049, says, if you ever come back, I will know about it. And then just, he quickly talks to Thawne, but comes back to the present day. Has he been hanging around Oliver Queen too much? Is he becoming Savitar? Why has the show chosen to give us this version of Barry Allen right now?
Given everything he's been through in the past 5 years, it's sort of to be expected that he would be quite different from, you know, sort of the original naive, idealistic, oh, I'm going to be a superhero and right wrongs kind of thing. A lot of people have died. He's been trapped in the Speed Force. He lost his mind. He, you know, lost both of his parents again. Actually, like, I think his reaction out of all of theirs was probably the most accurate. Everybody else was kind of quite willing to forgive Nora right off the bat, when, I mean, the truth is that she's been conspiring with one of their biggest enemies all along, and, I mean, how can they trust her? Iris getting mad at Sherlock, and everybody else just kind of, like, standing around and not really being upset that she's been communicating with Thawne. I mean, I think, like, Barry kind of made the point of, like, you know, I understand you coming back in time, I understand you going to see Thawne to learn how to do that, but, you know, even after you got here, after you had the team, after you had all of us here to help you learn how to do stuff, you still kept going back to him, and you still kept lying about it. And I think that's probably what Barry can't get over, is that, you know, they thought they were bonding with her and forming a strong relationship and kind of making up for lost time, and she kind of had ulterior motives the whole way through.
The reason I think Thawne is kind of helping her, because again, it's just for undermining Barry, and he's trying to become this father figure to her. And in a world where she had no one, in your opinion, has this humanised her slightly? You know, she reached out to maybe the only person that could understand what she was going through. Or is it just still...
No, it's still Nora making bad decision after bad decision. I mean, like, even her testing out her powers was predictably disastrous.
I mean, it was a guy holding, he just robbed a place, or there were two people, they just robbed a place, and there's a police officer. She runs into the police officer, they escape. There is another guy, 3 police officers. She runs and tries to help, destroys all 3 cars somehow, destroys all the cars, knocks them, and they escape again. And so it's just another example of Nora being terrible at being a superhero. He's dumped her in 2049. Is she going to turn evil now, do we think?
She could. I mean, she's always been a bit whiny and poor me, and, like, I mean, there's even a meme going around about, like, you know, Nora just sitting in various poses going, I'm so sad. She usually is moping around somewhere, so I don't think it's that far of a stretch to say, you know, Barry has essentially rejected her, or rather drawn a boundary line and said, like, there are consequences for your actions. Yeah. I can see her kind of missing the point of that and deciding that, you know, the only person that actually cared about her is Thawne, and she should screw trying to be a hero because she's never going to live up to that, and she's just basically useless, which...
I mean, where does the show go next? We've got 4 episodes left, I think. We've got this kind of stuff happening in 2049. Cicada still lurks in present day.
Just wandering around, doing whatever.
Yeah, or I think the new Cicada. I mean, where do you think this... How do you think the season's going to resolve itself?
I actually have no idea. I think this was a really weird time to do an episode like this.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been so happy to see a new Speedster probably before in my entire life, because it's something a bit different. In the same way I've been kind of thinking seeing Lex Luthor and Supergirl is a bit refreshing. It's a new Speedster, and they're now off the table, unfortunately. But yeah, it's weird. Like, I don't know where we're going to go. Godspeed's uniform, I really liked it.
I thought it looked kind of tacky. I mean, like,
I think it was pure computer graphics, but
everybody's been going on and on about Godspeed, and when he finally showed up, it was just kind of like, I'm a bit over Flash at the moment.
Yeah, I think it was there because he only survived an episode. He wasn't, like, deemed worthy enough to be running around for a whole season, but an interesting place to leave it in Flash. Move on to Arrow.
I really enjoyed this week of Arrow. Like, the one thing I would say about it is the Oliver Diggle storyline. I think they could have done without that entirely. Yeah. Because, like, honestly, every time we kind of, like, touched base with them, I'd forgotten what they were up to because I was so invested in what the various canaries were doing.
Yeah.
And even the 2040 stuff, like, now that they've gotten William out of the way, I was more on board with that, and I really like the idea of, like, Dinah's, like, network of canaries.
Yeah, there were just fleets of, like, canaries running riot in 2040, like, helping people.
Yeah.
Like, groups of them going around together.
I would be really on board for a spin-off like that.
Yeah.
Like, 2040, Dinah and her canaries going out and, like, yeah, I think I would be down with that.
Yeah, it was very, obviously, Earth 2 Laurel in 2040 as well, donning kind of blonde wig. She looked a bit like Black Cat in Marvel, but she's running around in 2040 as well, which was quite cool. I mean, the theme of the episode was kind of women helping women. The only issue I probably had with it was the fact that Earth 2 Laurel, who's been kind of on this good trajectory since the Diaz days, being framed for murder by Miko, and that's all it took to sort of send her back onto, like, her, like, kind of petty theft. Well, it wasn't so petty.
You can kind of get it, because she has worked really hard
yeah.
to try to be good, and she's had to fight against her own impulses a lot, and so I think, like, after all of the work she's put into, like, trying to prove herself and trying to better herself, and then, like, everybody turned on her at the drop of a hat, I could really see how she was like, well, you know what, screw it, if you're gonna blame me for being bad, I'm just gonna do bad things.
Yeah.
And kind of feeling like the only place she could find acceptance was with other villains. I think it is kind of a cool thing that she decided to go back to Earth 2. I really like Earth 2 Laurel, but it does show, like, a new evolution in the character, that she's kind of owning her mistakes and instead of hiding from them, being like, I have to go back and face them and make things better and kind of right the wrongs that I've done. So in present day, there will be no more Laura Lance, but Katie Cassidy is back for season 8, so presumably she's going to be featuring in the flash forwards quite a bit. Yeah. Sarah's entrance in this was just fucking awesome.
It was super annoying because I saw her name, I saw Katie Lotz on the the credits at the beginning. I was, I ruined it for myself.
Twitter was talking about it all over the place that she was on it.
I haven't been on Twitter for like a week because their Endgame footage is like out there, and
I've been out there like living dangerously. Sarah is probably my favorite character on Arrow.
Yeah. Do you mean in the Arrowverse?
No, on Arrow.
Oh, on Arrow. Okay.
I'm not sure who my favorite character in the Arrowverse is. I mean, I have several in the Arrowverse, and Sarah's definitely my favorite canary.
Yeah. So I mean, I'll pose you a question. They've been throwing a lot of spaghetti recently. We've got the idea that Emiko could have a show. We've got 2040 could be a show. In this season, we had Laurel, Dinah, Sarah, and Felicity sort of coming together. Felicity referred to them as the Birds of Justice.
Birds of Justice, and Sarah said something like that.
Yeah, and obviously it's they're alluding to the Birds of Prey. Is that another idea for another show? I mean, taking Sarah away from Legends would be probably not a great idea, but is that a show you'd watch?
Yeah, I think that would be a great show. I mean, I do love Sarah on Legends, and I don't know who would take her place on Legends if she moved over to another show, although, I mean, she could do both shows. I mean, it's all the Arrowverse. But, I mean, this is probably the most involved I've been in Arrow this season, so, yeah, I would definitely watch an entire show about them.
And also, interesting, Dinah got her screen back, kind of in a way we predicted she would. She's got a new bit of tech made by Felicity, so she's got that going forward. We've got to assume one of these shows is vying to kind of replace Arrow in the Arrowverse. I might put it on a sort of a poll on Twitter.
Well, I mean, it's sort of because, like, CW has a limit on how many Arrowverse shows they're going to have, and Batwoman is coming into it. So, I mean, I don't necessarily think they need to do a spinoff because you do have a network of 4 shows. If they want to keep these characters, they can add them to other shows. We're kind of trained to sort of think of how things can be spinoffs, but just because Arrow's ending, it's just one kind of puzzle piece of the kind of greater storytelling universe, so we might not get any spinoffs.
Should we talk about Legends? This is an episode where if you love this show, you will love this episode. If you don't like this show, this will be poison to you.
I hated this episode. One, like, Zari was just being weird and out of character and kind of a bitch to Mona for, like, no apparent reason. I hate it when they have musical episodes. I absolutely hate it. Like, watching it was kind of, I really wanted to just turn it off and be like, no, I'm skipping this week. And I do love Legends.
I think since the kind of mid-season break, it hasn't really found its footing again, I don't think. Not in my opinion. I didn't really enjoy this episode. One of my criticisms, as if there wasn't enough lust on this show, the was it the Hindu god of lust or the Hindu god of love? He was there, and he was giving everyone, like, kind of like dirty dreams. He was causing everyone to like just have, and this is in Austin era England, like in Bath in particular.
Like, the orgies and the whole sexual revolution and
came like hundreds of years early. Yeah, just didn't really work. The fact that they had this big like Bollywood dance song thing at the end. I again, like, I love Legends and I give Legends a lot of leeway, but it was so self-indulgent. It just didn't really feel that like it needed to happen. Doom Patrol last week, we talked about the kind of the musical number there. Again, it was quite self-indulgent, but it was, the point of it was to kind of really tell us how broken Larry is. Like, he was kind of fantasizing about wanting to have the kind of the energy to be able to do that song and dance number, but he didn't. And so there was that great kind of pulling the rug from the viewers, from underneath the viewers. But this was just, it was kind of unnecessary, and it was just, you could feel like the people who made it thought people who watch the show, they know we don't give a fuck about anything. They know we've got our own rules. Let's just fucking have like a, you know, like a Bollywood dance number. It was one step too far, I think.
Basically, the whole episode was a conflict between Mona and Zari, with Mona believing that like true love is completely losing control and sort of disappearing into it, and big romantic gestures and stuff like that. And Zari is kind of like the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, where, you know, being in love is kind of a luxury that the world that she came from, you couldn't afford to do it because it would get you killed. At the end, they just sort of both came to the realization that it should be somewhere in the middle, and it was kind of like, we didn't really need an entire episode for these two characters to, I mean, it felt even more like we were being pounded over the head with the fact that Zari and Nate are going to get together at some point. And
yeah, I wish that these shows, we talked about it last week, I wish that people just allowed to be friends in these shows, like, but there's this necessity that everybody has to be in a relationship, and we know from this week that Nate and Zari are going to end up together. We also had Ray and Nora, which has been quite an organic kind of relationship over the last couple of seasons. It's just,
I quite like the Ray and Nora storyline. I think they've done it really well, and it's been really sort of believable. And then with this episode, they absolutely ruined Ray and Nora for me. I was just like, no, I'm not into this.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like, it's the idea that lust was needed for them to kind of take the plunge finally.
Yeah.
But not all relationships like that. You know, people do things in different ways. Let's just let them be. Let's let Ray be Ray.
Well, and they had kind of a more interesting storyline, because everybody believes that Nora killed Hank. And, you know, it started out with them at the funeral, and Ray was really nervous because, you know, he and Nate have this really close relationship.
Yeah.
And his kind of pen pal / love interest killed his sort of like BFF's father, and he felt really awkward about it and didn't know how to handle it. And I think the episode would have better served exploring that relationship than doing all of these kind of like magical romantic gesture love scene things. This episode just didn't hit the mark for me.
One final point, Hank wasn't experimenting on these
that was just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, he did this kind of thing. It was like an audition for like Big Brother or something.
Yeah.
Like, he was wearing this like Hawaiian shirt, and he'd been filming himself. He was like, hey everyone, like, guess what, we've got this theme park where like magical creatures are about. And we find out that he wasn't experimenting on them. He'd used the picture that Nate drew when he was like 5 of this theme park with all these magical creatures there. They were going to call it Hey World, and it's super dumb.
I feel like they've kind of wanted to have their cake and eat it too, with Hank being like, oh, you know, he's off doing sketchy, suspicious things, and maybe he's a bad guy, and maybe he's not trustworthy. But then, like, literally the next scene, they have a really sort of heartfelt bonding moment between Nate and his father, and like, oh yeah, he's actually a good guy who cares and stuff. And I mean, Nate even refers to him at one point as like, you know, he's a workaholic who never took a day off in his life, and that was the important thing to him. And you can't really have a character who is both a kind of tunnel vision like workaholic who prioritizes his job over everything else, and this guy in a Hawaiian shirt who's building a theme park based off of his 5-year-old son's drawing.
You know that episode of Family Guy where Stewie's like filming himself? I can't remember the name of the show. It was like something like The Hills, but it was like, and it kind of like Big Brother, and you'd film yourself and you'd kind of talk to the camera, like say what your interests were.
Yeah.
And it was so cringy then, and it was just the fact that this was Hank. This wasn't like Nate doing it. This wasn't Ray doing it.
Yeah, I mean, like, if Nate or Ray had done it, it would have been totally
endearing,
different.
you know. But it was, yeah. And
or even like, well, any of the legends, like except for Constantine.
I think, was it the New World? I think that might have been what Stewie was auditioning for. Yeah, just peculiar, and it kind of has undermined everything we've known about this character. But yeah, I guess he loved him all along, and Nate didn't know, and now he's dead, and that's why Nate cried over his grave at the very end. And I don't know. I just want this show to maybe get back to problem of the week.
They need to go back to hunting down their like magical creatures and sorting that stuff out. I mean, the past few episodes, it's like they forgot what direction they were headed in over the break, and they've just kind of been throwing random things out there that aren't really very connected. Doom Patrol this week was like very centered on Jane, and we got to see a lot. We got to see the underground, which I think is a really cool concept, and I think they executed it really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also got to meet like a huge number of Jane's personalities whose names like I don't remember for the most part.
I mean, they very literally, it was her and Robot Man, and Robot Man's been doing nothing for weeks now. He had like a dance off with a kid last week. I can't remember what he did the week before. I think it was the one with the rat in his... It's nice to see him. I find him a very engaging character. It was nice to see him actually kind of the forefront of an episode. He was doing a whole like journey. You know, sometimes in TV shows or films they'll shrink them down. They'll like inject them in. They have to like solve this problem literally within them.
I actually really love that moment. Somebody mentioned the magic school bus, and the negative energy just sort of like zooped out of Larry, and without even like giving anybody a minute to like know what's going on, just threw Robot Man in Jane's head.
Yeah, and I like that they just basically said, "Oh, we don't need to explain it. I don't know how it's happening, but it's happening." It saved a whole load of time as well. And he was taking this journey deeper and deeper into Jane's subconscious, trying to find out, well, kind of accidentally finding out the moment of her creation. What was the name of the girl originally?
Kay.
There's this idea that she was abused as a child, and there was this idea that at school she wasn't particularly well liked. And as he went deeper into her subconscious, should we say, he was meeting all these members of the 64 and kind of learning about them and stuff. And what did you think about the fact that the actress who plays Jane played like 10 of them, and other actresses played other versions of them?
I kind of like that. And again, I like that they didn't try to explain it. They're just like, some of us look like Jane, some of us don't. Nobody knows why.
Don't overthink it.
It just kind of felt authentic, sort of, because, I mean, you imagine the different personalities came about to serve different purposes, and, you know, some of them, it would be necessary for them to look like Jane, or they would be more closely affiliated to Jane, others might not. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. I like that, you know, it was Jane who kind of stood up and took control of her memories and decided to sort of rejoin the living.
Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting when the kind of big formation that took like the image of her stepfather or father or whatever it was, and she defeated it, sent it back down this well, and she went to bed that night, and you kind of had this idea that she's going to have this great night's sleep, like for the first time in a long time, should have peace of mind. But she immediately starts hearing what the stepfather would say to her. And it was interesting because I think it's important to know that trauma isn't just, there's no silver bullet for trauma. There is no kind of, we went into your subconscious and it's fixed now. You're fixed now. Depression, mental health issues, they are, sometimes it's just about coping. It's about having coping mechanisms for them. Sometimes they never get resolved. I'm kind of glad it wasn't just done in one go.
Yeah, you know, it was a really sort of significant moment in her development and her kind of acceptance of her situation, that she was able to sort of confront this like kind of huge, literally overblown image of her father and sort of kind of come out victorious. But even that like doesn't erase the trauma. It's still there, and in a way has actually her confrontation of the memory of her father sort of brought those memories closer to the surface. So she's gonna have to deal with stuff that she's had completely hidden from herself until now.
And it's literally kind of locked away in different rooms as well, which was very interesting. The way that her memories and her personas were kind of all had their little departments within it. I like the idea of the hierarchy of personas as well, because when Karen was being like dragged in, they were like, Karen, for fuck's sake, every time, just, you know, and they were kind of like telling her off a bit, and they were saying like, where's Jane? Like, we need to get Jane back out there because she's the prime, I think they said. I like the idea that they just all know that, and they all have a kind of there's a respect for all the personas, they respect each other, and they know who needs to be where at what time and stuff. That was cool.
They talked too a lot about like how each of them had their jobs.
Yeah.
They all seemed to quite like their functions. Like there wasn't any sort of resentment of like, oh, I should be the primary and Jane should be over here. It was like, no, this is your job, you need to do your job.
Yeah, and like people like Penny Farthing didn't want to go up. Like they were kind of slightly terrified. And when she was up, she had this stutter, and when she's down the underground, she's still quite meek and quite shy, but she's able to express herself a lot better, which was really cool. I like Jane and Robot Man. I think they're a really good team. Of all the kind of characters, I think they work really well together. It's kind of a paternal thing, and one of the personas was like, said to Robot Man, you know, you will never have what Karen maybe was saying, you'll never have what me and Doug had,
Yeah.
you and Jane, and he obviously doesn't want that. He just wants to have a kind of surrogate daughter after his issues with his real daughter. And I think it's good that we had him in an episode, and it's good to see that he's actually developing as a human being, because he had some kind of very adult ideas and some kind of grander thoughts. You know, he wasn't just, when we saw him as a man like fucking the nanny and stuff like that, even though it's been like 20 years or whatever, he has evolved and he is trying to help people now. And he had that shouting match here a few weeks ago, and he was literally in there just to apologise. No persona was kind of manifesting or presenting, and Jane was kind of this husk, just not really doing anything in the real world, but he went in just to apologise, and he kind of did that, and then he kind of left, and Jane was able to kind of deal with the larger idea of the episode by herself. But yeah, it's good that she was the one to deal with it. I thought it was a really strong episode, and it was nice to have. I always just look for that absurdity of the week, and they were inside her mind in the underground. Yes, that's all I want from this show. Just give me fucking crazy scenarios, a crazy scenario of the week, and I won't overthink it. I think that's the deal they want us to make. They twice in this episode said, don't overthink how he's in her head. Don't overthink, well, the personas don't look the same. Let's just not overthink Doom Patrol. It's really well made, and I'm really enjoying it.
I think one of the strengths of the show is that you can't really predict what the next episode is going to be.
Yeah.
So every week it's kind of like this little lottery of like, okay, I'm going to watch Doom Patrol. What are we getting this week? You know, some shows that could be a negative, but I think it works really well for the Doom Patrol because, I mean, they do have that absurdity, and, you know, they have the confidence just to say, like, you know what, not everything needs a finite explanation. Some things just are. Deal with it. And I think sometimes when people try to explain why, you know, weird things happen in stories, the explanation actually kind of takes away from the believability, because you're just like, that doesn't seem right. And so just have something out there to be like, yeah, it's just, this is the way it is, just accept it.
Let's move on to the Twilight Zone. While we're talking about big issues, this was a very deep episode, very kind of dark episode. You know, in Doctor Who they say timey-wimey to do with time travel. Yeah. Zony-wony is going to be my new expression for kind of the supernatural element in these kind of episodes. The Zony-wony element was a camera that could rewind time, but that was just not even close to being what this episode was about, which was quite interesting. They really kind of buried the lead on that.
For me, this episode fell a little flat, and I don't know if it's because they tried to take on too much for the time frame, or maybe it was down to the pacing. But I mean, like, obviously, so like, I mean, the issue is designed around the concept, well, several concepts of like police brutality and kind of the lack of agency a lot of black people have in their lives because of societal restrictions and obstacles that are put in front of them. You had just this kind of very normal mother and son kind of going to college and sort of teasing each other, and I mean, they obviously had a very loving relationship, and she's trying like over and over and over to keep her son alive, basically.
Yeah, she's trying to literally get him through the doors of his college, and every way she tries to, well, I mean, the first way she does it, she accidentally rewinds, figures out the camera can rewind time. Okay, great, we know that, but it's just such a secondary part of this episode. They meet a policeman on the way. He says, can I see your pink slip? Who carries your pink slip? Are you giving me lip? Out comes the gun. The son gets shot. She's traumatized. She knows that she can obviously rewind time. So she goes, can I do it now? She rewinds, and he's alive. And it's kind of like I guess, a Groundhog Day, you know, that kind of living the same thing over and over. Can she get from A to B without the police officer kind of harassing them? And the answer is no. The answer is she's nice to the guy. She's cruel to the guy. She buys him pie in the shop where they kind of meet him for the first time. Every route they take on the road, they get got. And it's just the idea that there will always be bigoted people doing the terrible, terrible things. And no matter how nice you are, that person just has their belief system, and they will always... Yeah, and so the kind of the takeaway is that even a magic camera, you know, it seems such a kind of silly thing to consider with such grand current issues, but even the magic camera won't stop this intolerant person, like literally finding them out, literally trying to spoil their day.
Yeah, because I mean, like, he just shows up.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's like, it started out with him, like, pulling them over because the son was playing with the video camera, but then, like, it gets to the point where he just appears in places. Like, they actually finally do make it to the school, and they're about to go in, and all of a sudden all of these cops show up. I think the episode said a lot of important things, but I don't think it worked quite well on the story level.
Is this an episode that was a really great and engaging episode, just not quite a Twilight Twilight Zone episode. Does that make sense? Not that the Twilight Zone hasn't always discussed, racial inequality, big issues, because it always has done. We're not saying that, but I mean, if you said it felt flat, what was the kind of...
I think the thing, typically with the Twilight Zone, they sort of lean into the mystical, supernatural element, and this didn't. I mean, like, you had the, like, rewinding thing, but it was given very little attention.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to sort of pinpoint what didn't go right. Like, I think the episode almost made it. It's just needed a little bit more tweaking to kind of get it to be where it should be.
I thought it was interesting that the cop talks to Miss Mabel, who is an African-American woman who works at the cafe serving him pie, and he's so like nice to her. And the fact that, I don't know, was it a kind of superiority thing?
In his worldview, that was exactly where a black woman should be, is behind a counter serving pie to a white guy.
Yeah, and so conversely, the idea that this African-American guy was about to start at college, he was really, like, put out by that. At the end, the mother said, the problem is your fear. You've and the idea that just this guy's spent his life trying to remove opportunities maybe from, like, young black men, and it's just he's fearful. It's just this age-old inherent like racism that's his decades or generations of maybe people his age have had. It didn't really have a bigger impact on the story, but at the very end, years later, the guy has had a daughter, and she carries the camera, she drops the camera and it breaks, and the mum is like suitably horrified because it means she can't rewind anything now. What did you make of that? Just a little bit at the
I had
end.
huge issues with the ending. She's been, like, supposedly holding this camera recording for, like, 10 years. She obviously couldn't have been recording every second of his life, or we would hope not, because in over the past 10 years. So he's been out of sight of the camera at various points in time. The other bit was, they set the camera down, they know this camera has the ability to rewind to the past, and they just let this, like, 9-year-old girl pick it up and wander off with it like it's a toy. I mean, I would not let any kid touch something like...
I don't think I'd let many adults kind of know of its existence. I'd just keep it to myself. Yeah.
And then it broke, and you see the police lights, and it's sort of implied that because it broke, the cop is going to come and get him now, and I don't think they should have had it. It wasn't well thought out. It didn't fit the logic of the show up to that point.
Series 8 Game of Thrones has just started. My issues before I even saw this episode was why there are only 6 episodes. HBO obviously would give you as many as you want. George R.R. Martin said if the 2 books published that he hasn't finished yet published, there need to be 5 more seasons. I just don't understand why there were only going to be 6 episodes. It meant that every second of every episode had to be kind of worth it. We're 1 episode in, and I'll just read the one line that I put on Twitter. 90% exposition and reunion, expected but no less disappointing. There had to be a lot of movement, fair enough. I mean, there was a lot of movement in Series 7. I just feel like we're 1 episode down, and they're going to be, I think, 2 of them, 2 of the episodes at least are going to be 80 minutes long. We've got a lot of actual time, but I just feel like it was all exposition and all moving of parts, and it was kind of frustrating.
I really enjoyed the episode. I'm happy with it. It did what I wanted the first episode to do. I mean, it's been 2 years since season 7. We got a lot of reunions between people. I mean, like, you had Arya and Jon, Theon and Yara, Tyrion and Sansa. Got the scene between Sam and Daenerys was just...
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. The kind of final moment between Bran and Jaime. There's a lot of characters who haven't been in the same room finally coming together and trying to sort of balance their various, like, personalities and ambitions and wants and politics. And I was kind of just happy with sort of a state of, like, seeing where everybody is.
I mean, you can't not enjoy a thing with such a high budget, characters we've known for like 7 years. But I think I just wanted a bit more kind of substance. The final scene of the whole, not the penultimate scene where they're up at last half. That was the only kind of movement we really got on the plot, but enjoyable. But I just wanted a little bit more. I'm just greedy. How bad is Euron Greyjoy's death going to be?
I hope it's really bad.
I think it's going to be seriously bad. He somehow charmed his way into Cersei's bed. She liked how much...
That was really weird.
It was really weird. It was super uncharacteristic, and it made me think that he is being set up for an ultra bad death. He somehow charmed his way into Cersei's bed. She likes how much of arrogant... She says she likes how arrogant he is or something. But I think she's going to really destroy him.
I think she's just completely playing now.
Yeah, that's going to be great to watch when she kills him. Let's talk about Bronn, who was with 3 prostitutes, and Qyburn walks in, says one of them has pox, is going to die within a year, and Bronn chokes on his wine, suitably terrified. Which one? Which one are we talking about? Qyburn has set him the task. Obviously, Cersei has set Qyburn the task. Bronn has to go and use that crossbow to kill Jaime and Tyrion. That's probably not going to happen. I'm assuming he's going to go there, and Tyrion's going to go, I'll pay double, and that'll be it. Bronn will be on the team as well.
I mean, at this stage, Bronn has made friendships with, both of the Lannister brothers. As much as he tries to present himself as kind of, your typical sellsword, he's only after, money and reward and women and, whatever he can get. And that's where his loyalties lie. He is a deeply loyal character.
Yeah.
And I think he kind of just rightly read the situation of, well, I can't really refuse this task, but doesn't mean I'm actually going to carry it out.
Can you imagine that crossbow with dragon glass arrows in it firing at the army?
That would be pretty cool.
It'd be fucking sick, and I think that's what's going to happen. Bronn's, it would be strange for him to betray them at this point, and literally he'll probably just go and say, Cersei gave me, 3 chests in a wagon of gold, give me 6 and I'm yours. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that reunion, and my dream team, if you'd asked me 3 years ago, 95% of them are either at Winterfell or dead. So Bronn is the one missing piece. I think just put him back in there.
He just needs to get up to Winterfell with everybody else, and
just crossbowing everybody. Should we talk about Jorah and Dany? Jorah and Dany turn up to see Sam. She's like, who do I have to thank for saving my dear friend Jorah's life?
The most awkward moment ever.
Yeah, and Sam's like, well, I did what I could, I lived to serve. And he asks for a pardon because he stole his family sword.
And books from the Citadel.
Yeah, from House Tarly. She's like, not Randall Tarly. He's like, oh, my father, you know him? And we just hear the story of how she executed the person who saved her best friend, practically his life's father and brother. And Sam is just broken. And Dany is just it's as awkward as it sounds. Can you imagine going to someone trying to give them a reward and you find out you literally last week killed their parents?
Yeah. John Bradley in this scene was perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably my favorite moment out of the entire series. Just him sort of realizing what she's saying.
But maintaining respect as well.
And trying to be respectful and kind of being crushed, but also, the awareness that these people were not nice to him. And, he says, well, at least I can go home now that my brother's the Lord, and Dany has to kind of be well about that. But yeah, it felt like a very genuine response.
His face, he didn't even need to say anything. His face told the story. This is huge, isn't it? Because he goes to Jon, they kill my family, what are you going to do about it? You're Aegon Targaryen, you're the rightful, heir to the throne. And it just makes me wonder whether this is a divide is about to start happening. I've tried not to have any larger ideas about where I think season 8 is going to finish, who's going to be on the throne or not. But this makes me think that it's not going to be Dany on the throne, Jon, Warden of the North kind of scenario. This could be the beginning of a divide between the two of them that could last till the very end of the season. Obviously, Tyrion had that look on his face when when Jon went into her bunk on the ship heading back. He advised against the Tarly murders. Yeah, I just don't know what the resolution this is going to be, because Jon wouldn't have done it. He would have given them a chance. He would have sent them to join the Night's Watch or something. Is this the beginning of a divide happening between them?
There's going to be conflict because of it. Because Jon is the type of person, he's not going to be able to keep his mouth shut. You can just imagine as soon as he finished talking to Sam, he would go straight to Daenerys and be like, what the fuck did you do? I don't know how it's actually going to end. Just thinking about the characters in general, I think kind of the best outcome for Westeros would be for Dany and Jon to rule together in some capacity, because I think they balance each other out really well. Jon is kind of ultra moral about stuff. It's obvious he was raised by Ned Stark. As many people have told him, that's exactly what got Ned Stark killed. And sometimes you can't do the good thing. There's various things you can do, but none of them are, actually the good thing.
The least worst option sometimes, yeah.
He's kind of capable of balancing out her sort of bloodthirsty side, because she's got a little bit of a temper. She has a lot of good traits for a ruler, and a lot of good ideas, but when somebody crosses her, she is kind of scorched earth.
Yeah.
And so I think the two as a partnership would kind of be the best case scenario. What actually ends up happening at the end of season 8 is anyone's guess, though.
This has kind of planted the idea in my mind that we might get Jon on the Iron Throne, and we might get Sansa as Lady of Winterfell, and somehow Dany's going to be taken off the board. I don't know how, but the way this was done was so shocking. Nobody was forgiven. He went to John. This is like a cliffhanger ending. I don't know how this is going to be resolved, if it can be resolved. And after the fight, you know, I don't know how the Night King thing's going to resolve. You know, the third episode of the Battle for Winterfell. Do they win? Do they lose? Is the Night King kind of dead after the third one? And then it's about the politics, you know, in 4, 5, 6. I don't know how it's going to end, but the way Sansa, if we can talk about Sansa for a while, the way she is being given to us now, it's that she's ready to take the place as like a kind of queen in her own right. You know, they call her Lady of Winterfell, and Arya is going to be her executioner.
Yeah.
I always think Winterfell. The Sansa's being shown to us is that, let's quickly talk about Sansa's history. All she wanted to be was a lady. She was promised to Joffrey, tortured by Joffrey, then sort of like humiliated by being betrothed to Tyrion. People thought she killed Joffrey, was spirited away. Littlefinger treated her the way Littlefinger did, sold her like a broodmare off to the Boltons. Again, tortured, raped. She's been trodden on by everybody, and so she is now this very cold, very cynical. That's the kind of person she is, because she's never been shown any kind of warmth by anyone except Tyrion, ironically. And now the woman we're getting, she's suddenly being we're told she's like the smartest person people have ever met. I don't really know how that's happened. She's learnt a lot. She's got a kind of mind for people, you know. She knows about the politics of people, but the way we're being sold Sansa is now she's like a ready-made, kind of ready to go. I don't really understand it. And I think the thing that bugged me most was when Tyrion, who in season 7 made so many bad moves, you know, like the thing with Casterly Rock, and when they spoke, and he's only ever been nice to her, and she said, I used to think you were the smartest guy I ever met. Yeah, I mean, nobody should have believed Cersei was going to walk up to the wall, but she now is being given to as smarter as even Tyrion, who was like the kind of smartest person in the whole show. The only reason I think we're being given this super saiyan Sansa, who hasn't really earned what we're being sold her as, is that she's going to be Lady of Winterfell. And so I think it just leaves me to believe there's going to be this division between Dany and Jon is going to end up being on the Iron Throne. As much as he'll hate it, you know, he'll have Sam as his like maester and stuff like that, but I want to know how they're going to fall out, because the only reason we're being given this amazing version of Sansa that everybody thinks is super smart and such is because her final resting place is going to be like a real position of power in the whole storyline. I don't know why we'd be given all this Sansa being amazing kind of narrative if she wasn't going to end up there. So that's what I think. Any big thoughts for...
The episode didn't really do anything revolutionary. It was entertaining. We got to kind of see where everybody is at the moment. There were a couple funny bits in it.
The last half. And that was really funny. And then real horror straight afterward.
I'm not sure how... Like, I've always kind of been a bit wary of how short this season is going to be, even with the longer episodes, if they're actually going to be able to wrap everything up in that time span, because there are a lot of threads floating around. And I think this kind of like abrupt switch in attitudes towards Sansa is kind of one of the first casualties of that.
Tyrion, you know, made these terrible, you know, he's no war chief, you know, he doesn't know how wars really work, and he tried to be smart and outsmart Jaime, and the thing with Casterly Rock, he failed then, he gave us some other bad advice, I can't remember what it was. He's now, you know, walked out in the middle of Winterfell's banquet hall and said, yeah, the Lannister army are coming up here, really dumb thing to say. He's being spoken down to by Sansa, who, you know, Tyrion was the only nice person to her back when she was in King's Landing. Is this a kind of... Are we really being sold a kind of fall of grace for Tyrion, and is he about to die? Think about the first 5, 6 seasons of Tyrion, and 7 and 8 being thrown under the bus, and I just don't really know why. I don't know. I don't think he's going to be killed by Bronn, but he was held aloft as like this amazing character. You know, that's why Varys was taking him to Essos. I just don't know what the point of this is. All this negative Tyrion stuff, unless he's going to betray somebody and go back to the Lannisters, or he's going to be killed.
It's not the first time that... I mean, this sort of happens with Tyrion, where he has a few moments of redemption, and then he kind of gets shit on. I mean, you think about the Battle of Blackwater. That was an actual success for him.
That's
and
true.
He got everything taken away because of it. He didn't even get credit for it, and they just shoved him off into a corner. So I think because of his name and because he's a dwarf, the other characters don't necessarily take him seriously or view him as a valid person, and it's kind of like when he's useful, they're fine with him being around, but if he makes the least little mistake, they're just like, oh, well, you're a Lannister, or oh, well, you're a dwarf, you know, you're not actually worth what regular people are. And it sort of highlights the fact that, you know, no matter what he does, because I mean, he is very often the smartest person in the room, and he always has to work 10 times as hard to make everybody else realize realize that. And usually they only realize that when they've gone and done what they wanted to do, it's failed, and then they've had to sort of face the fact that, well, you know, everything that Tyrion said was actually right. And so I think it's just kind of a continuation of what his story's been so far.
2 points. Arya wants a weapon made. We saw Gendry give this axe of dragon glass to the Hound, which was...
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see him use that. It's going to be amazing. This kind of weapon. We get a picture of her in the trailer kind of wielding a kind of... It looks like a bow staff and you split in half, kind of like Daredevil style. She shows him this plan. It kind of, again, similarly looks like that. Yeah, I kind of want to see... I mean, she's already got like a Valyrian steel dagger. She's got a needle.
Like,
she's going to be armed to the teeth. She maybe somebody else might be given the dagger to use. Oh, did we talk about last half where the little Lord Umber was like turned into wall art and he screamed and they burnt him alive? That was really cool. That was the most horror we've had in like a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty graphic and brutal.
Yeah, you saw his head just like move in the background and then he starts like screaming like a banshee. That was great. And then the final scene when Jaime met up with Bran.
And Jaime rides up and he kind of gets down and he's just sort of looking around, and like the expression on his face when he sees Bran and realizes, and it's just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great place for the episode to end.
Yeah, can't wait for the next episode. I think I'm looking forward to some kind of momentum, some kind of things happening. Everybody's where they are now. Heavy lifting has been done. Let's just kind of
I think going forward from now, we will have a lot more momentum and a lot more plot direction. I mean, this episode really was very much kind of pulling people back into the world after a 2-year break and re-solidifying alliances and you know, getting different characters to meet up and make those connections and have interactions with each other.
And Beric and Tormund, they live. I'm so happy.
Alright, so yeah, that is us for this week. You can follow us on Twitter at GeekNerdPod, Facebook /TheGeekly. We are on Patreon, Geek Nerd Podcast. Yeah, we're up there doing stuff.
See ya.
See ya.